guys! So Taylor and I decided that we should make a video to explain what happened with Henley's birth story and what's going on with our daughter, because we've just had a lot of family and friends asking a lot of questions. So I'm gonna tell you the story today of how I had a C-section with no anesthesia. Regular pregnancy. Towards the end of the pregnancy though, I ended up being diagnosed with polyhydramnios, and this means that I had too much amniotic fluid building up around the baby. I didn't even know that was a thing, so we learned something. I was diagnosed with that on Saturday and I was sent home. They said rest up and know that if your water does happen to break or you have any indication that that has happened, that you need to come to the emergency room. Because the big risk with polyhydramnios is that you can have cord prolapse, meaning that the cord comes out before the baby does, and that's life-threatening for Henley. So I went home and I knew that something in my body, in my mind, felt wrong. It was just one of those feelings. I didn't really feel comfortable being at home by myself, because I was just really nervous about complications happening. But I went to sleep that night. Taylor came home from work the next day around 1, and that's around the time that I decided to get up. I had not been sleeping very much. I hadn't been comfortable. It had been a very painful last few weeks, because we would later learn that I had about 3.5 liters or more of amniotic fluid that had built up. So that'll take a toll on your body to carry around. But on this Sunday when I woke up, this was January 5th, 2020, I got up, I just did a couple of things, and I felt a big thud. And I thought that was really strange. It felt like the baby had hit its head on my pelvis. That's how big the thud was. And I didn't understand what happened, but as soon as I stood up, there was a literal flood that started to happen with the amniotic fluid. And there was no question, my water had broken, so I screamed for Taylor. I told him he needed to come up, and I, at that point, was starting to panic because I knew that we had this risk of prolapse, cord prolapse, and I was scared for our daughter. I knew that we had a 15-minute ride at least to the hospital. I knew that if the cord prolapsed, we didn't have 15 minutes. So I was very much panicking. I told Taylor that we needed to call 911. He said they have to come to us and then take us. So realistically, we can drive to the hospital faster, and he was right. So we hopped in the car. We got in to the sign-in station in labor and delivery and realized that I had left my wallet in the car. And at this point I was visibly panicking because my body was shaking and I was very scared, and I just wanted somebody to check me and make sure that Henley was okay. And they said, you need to get signed in, we need your health cards. So they actually sent Taylor back to the car, and I stood there and I was angry with them, but they said to me, are you having contractions? Because it looked like I was scared and in pain, and I said, no, I'm scared because I have polyhydramnios. And they said, it's okay, it's gonna be okay. I later found out that, I later heard the nurses actually outside of my room when I was in a room reminding each other what polyhydramnios was and what the risks were. So by the time Taylor came back, they brought me into a room and they gave me a gown, they asked me to change, and I actually stood in the tub in the bathroom in the room, which I had actually done for a couple of seconds at home as well because I couldn't control the amniotic fluid. I was standing in the tub and I looked at my husband, and at this point it had been a good chunk of time. It had been at least 15 to 20 minutes since everything started happening. And I said to Taylor, I said, you need to go get somebody to check me because at this point there's so much going on down there, I don't even know if there's a cord. Which is fair. It's my first baby, and there was a lot going on down there. 3.5 liters of amniotic fluid is a lot. So I got him to go ask. As he was coming back in, I heard our doctor, who we love, who was involved in this whole thing, I heard her come in and say, "What are you doing? Put her on the bed, I need to examine her." So I thought to myself, finally, somebody knows what's going on and somebody can actually help me. So I got up on the bed, they put a bunch of stuff under me to try to control the flood, and nothing was really helping. But the doctor gave me an exam, and she said, there's no cord coming out, I can feel the baby's head, and I thought, good, that's perfect. We got here in time, we're just in for a regular labor and delivery now. And she said, you're 4 centimeters, and I thought, good for me, I have not been in pain, so that's exciting. And we all just laughed and continued on. I started to get settled in. They started to try and put a monitor on Henley, and unfortunately they weren't really able to find her heartbeat very well, / it was a little bit low. So another nurse came in and they decided they were going to try to put one on her head, from my understanding, when they go inside and put a monitor on her. And as they were trying to do that, that wasn't working either. So the doctor came back in, and about 10 minutes had passed, and the doctor said, you're 6 centimeters. And I thought, wow, go me. I'm not in any pain. That's kind of weird, but I'll take it. And I just thought, give me the epidural now, or just let me push in 20 minutes or so. But I think at this point the nurses and the doctors started to kind of change their perspective, their facial expressions. I was trying not to look at them because they were giving me exams, and that's not comfortable, so I was trying to look away. My husband says that at this point their facial expressions started to change, and the doctor said to me, there is a possibility of a C-section. And I said, okay. I said, do whatever you have to do to keep us safe. But she kept trying to feel around, figure out what was going on, and then she said, I'm gonna call it. And I thought, okay, so we definitely need a C-section. She's figured that out. But at this point, I didn't know, because I wasn't looking. Taylor ended up saying that I actually had started to bleed, which is a really bad thing if you've never given birth before. So the doctor then said to me, up until this point I didn't suspect anything was really wrong, but the doctor then said to me, I need you to get up and walk into the OR because that's faster. And I thought, why do we need to be faster? And that was when it really hit me that there was something wrong. I still didn't know that I had bled. I just knew they were struggling to find her heartbeat and that we needed a C-section. So I thought, okay, emergency C-section, doctors do these all the time. Women have these all the time. This we can do. I was just trying to take really deep breaths and stay calm. Taylor and I had a moment as I walked out, and we kind of locked eyes, and we knew that he wasn't going to be able to come into the OR at this rate. It was emergency. They had me walk next door into it. When I got into the OR, everybody was rushing a lot. I thought, yeah, okay, it's an emergency, we know this, and I heard them ask about the anesthesiologist. And I thought, well, yeah, we need one of those, obviously. But I sat down on the table, or laid down on the table, and I started to get really scared and overwhelmed because I knew that this was an emergency situation. I just wanted my daughter to be okay, and I wanted myself to be okay. I just didn't know what all was happening. And in retrospect, I'm really happy that they didn't tell me exactly what was going on, because that would have made it significantly worse. But I didn't know what was going on. So my body started to get really shaky, and they poured this cold antiseptic stuff that they pour on your abdomen to make sure that they're not going to cause any infection or anything. They poured 3 jugs of that just over me because everything was happening so quickly, and the OR is already very cold, and I was very panicky, so my body started to shake to a point where I couldn't really control it very well. So I heard them say, somebody needs to hold her down. And so they had a person on all of my limbs, The people who were helping hold my arms, they gave me a nurse on each arm. They kind of each held my hand and tried to talk me through what was going on. They put the divider up, I don't know what it's called, but it basically keeps you from seeing the procedure so that you're not traumatized by seeing what's going on. And then they started the procedure. And I felt a couple of needles or so, and I thought, oh, that's kind of weird. I thought normally you'd get something in your back, but I thought, well, it's an emergency. They have to do what they have to do. But I started to feel what they were doing. And so I yelled, I said, no, I can feel it, I can feel it. I thought they didn't know. They knew. And the nurse who was holding my hand said she can feel it, and confirmed to the doctor, because they knew that, but she was, confirming that. So it turns out that the couple of needles that I felt were a couple of shots of local anesthetic that they were able to put into my lower abdomen. They, from what my OB explained, chose which layers of skin needed to be prioritized to be receiving some of the local and which did not. And they also were not able to give the freezing any time to take once they injected the needles. So at this rate, I didn't know, but I had suffered in the room that they were examining me in a placental abruption, and that meant that my daughter was at the point where she wasn't receiving oxygen, and I was at the point of bleeding out. So they did not have a choice in terms of timing to start the procedure right away to save both of us, but the anesthesiologist was in the parking lot, which is not the OR, and which meant no anesthetic for me. So the making of the incision and that type of thing was obviously pretty bad, being able to feel it. Some of the local did help, not enough, but it did. But then the part of a C-section that is the worst without anesthetic, for those who know, is in a C-section they do have to stretch your muscles to make room for the baby coming out. I don't really know how to explain it, but at this point I had been trying to calm myself down because I didn't know what was happening, and the nurse who was holding onto my left hand said, "You can scream if you need to." And at this rate, that wasn't even weird to me because I knew that something was going on, so I did for a significant period of time. I didn't understand what the stretching of the muscle was and what was going on with that, because in my mind I still should have been frozen, so I thought people who have had C-sections told me that you can still feel pressure, and this muscle situation was something that was such a weird combination of pain and stretching and pressure that I thought to myself, I literally thought, am I just a horrible wimp? Is this the pressure? And I don't even know how to handle that, like, stop the pressure, which looking back is really sad. But that type of pain is something that I would never wish on anybody, and that was, the incision was one thing. You can be cut, people get cuts, but the stretching of the muscles, the pulling apart without the anesthesia was not, it's indescribable, and it was rough. So the procedure lasted 18 minutes, and approximately 9 minutes of it I was awake, alert, and feeling it for. The anesthesiologist arrived at that point about halfway through and was able to put me out. So for the last part of it, I was able to be out. Unfortunately, the part where I actually got to see my daughter, the part where I would have seen my daughter, I actually didn't get to see. So that was a little bit frustrating going through all of that, but I understand. I just wanted to be out at that point. At the end of the day, I was okay. They considered giving me a transfusion because I had lost a significant amount of blood, but my body did start to respond the way it's supposed to after a C-section and all of that, and so they didn't have to do that. Henley was also okay, and she actually ended up with no brain damage as a result of oxygen loss, and we believe that's because the doctors and nurses were willing to make the call that they did and put me through, what I went through for Henley, and, would do again. Not that I will ever have that opportunity, so we're thankful for that, to save her and have her be healthy. Now that being said, the reason for all of this happening is because Henley was diagnosed with a condition which is called esophageal atresia with a tracheoesophageal fistula. So she ended up having surgery for that, and Taylor and I kind of explained that to our family members and might explain that in another little video for our family and friends to understand. But the reason that all of the fluid buildup occurred with the amniotic fluid is because she was not able to swallow in the womb. So normally babies in the womb would swallow and pee out amniotic fluid in their current fashion. She would try to swallow something, it would come back up, and all of the amniotic fluid built up and up and up. So from my understanding, it was all of the pressure of such an excess of fluid that caused the placental abruption, but we don't really have an exact explanation as to why and how that happened. Henley is at Sick Kids now. She's been home here and there, but we've been giving our friends and families updates on her, and we'll, continue to do that. And Sick Kids has been absolutely phenomenal to us. So if you ever have a chance to support them in any way, we say absolutely do it. And we just want to thank all of our friends and family and loved ones and church family and work friends and just everyone for all of their prayers, for their support, for the meals they've made us, for their encouragement, for literally everything. So thank you guys so much.